View from the Gutters, episode 113. Welcome to View from the Gutters, the comic book podcast where each episode we discuss a collected edition, trade paperback, or graphic novel, and then recommend and vote on the book for the next episode. Warning: the discussion portion of this show has massive spoilers for that book. On this episode, we discuss Wayward, Volume 1, and, to skip ahead to the recommendation section, skip to 10106. Episode 113. I'm Andrew Chard.
I'm Tobiah Panshin.
I'm Kayleigh Fleeman.
And I'm Cade Reynolds.
Hey.
Yeah, this is not a configuration that we've had very often.
No. Not really.
Nope.
But I'm glad everybody's here.
Yeah, we're having a good time.
Yeah.
Chatting about Bob's Burgers.
Yes. And Rick and Morty.
Mm-hmm.
But on to the main event. First, do we want to thank the sponsors for this episode?
Thank you to our episode sponsors, Brian May, Addison Appleby, and Tony Cortero.
Thank you.
You are our best friends.
And thank you to all of our patrons.
Hashtag not actually our best friends, but we still love you.
Yes, that's a real hashtag. And thank you to all of our patrons for making the show better.
Yeah.
And this week, we're going to start with Kayleigh.
Yep.
Her favorite.
Yep.
Because you pitched the book this week.
I did. So
Yeah.
I'm actually prepared to talk about it first,
Nice.
which is exciting.
That is exciting.
Because it's not being thrust upon me.
The Lisa Frank notebook is out.
It is out.
I can read your tiny handwriting from here. I mean, I can't
Probably
read
not.
it. I can see it.
Yeah. Because I was going to say, I can't read it from here.
You need a microscope to read that.
For the record, we are talking about Wayward
Yeah.
by the people who created Wayward.
Yep. Jim Zub.
Jim Zub.
Steve Cummings. John Rauch. And Tamara Bonvillain.
Nice. I'm sure all of those were pronounced 100% correct.
Absolutely.
And
Totally.
Is her name actually Bondvillain?
Yeah.
yeah.
And I really hope that that's how you pronounce it. Because that's amazing.
Wait, Bond villain?
Yeah. Spelled exactly like you think it is.
That is really fucking cool.
Yeah.
Wait, where's her name on this?
It's
the
on
cover.
the cover. I don't know.
I see.
Read physical copies.
I see Jim Zub, Steve Cummings, John Rauch, and Marshall Dillon.
Well, I don't know what to tell you. Her
Yeah.
name's on the cover.
Oh, okay. She did alternate covers.
Yeah.
Oh, is that it?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, oh well.
But
she
her
has
name
a cool
is
name.
still Bondville.
Yeah.
It's Bondvillain.
It's Bondvillain. There's a D. There's a silent D.
No, it's a D
Silent
that's not there, but you
hidden
pronounce
D.
it anyway.
Invisible, pronounceable D. That's a thing, right? In English?
It is now.
It's why it's such a hard language to learn.
Yeah. We just
Fun
throw
facts.
in like letters.
All right, Kayleigh. Run us through the list.
This is my first time reading Wayward because I pitched it without having read it first.
Oh,
which
yeah.
is strictly against the rules.
But happens
I mean,
more often than
yeah.
not.
So,
Yeah.
what are you going to do about it? You picked it, so there you go. So what appealed to me the most about this was that it has all of the trappings of like an anime or manga, but I personally don't have the patience for those. And
But you don't want to read 412 chapters of Naruto?
no, thank you. But I really like a lot of the stories, and I love a lot of the mythology that's thrown in. And so it was really cool to read this that has a lot of that core essence to it. Another thing that really drew me to this book was I was flipping through it, and the colors are absolutely beautiful. It's so vibrant. It's so great. I don't even know how to really to describe it. It's like a watercolor / chalks. Like,
Well, it's super pastel.
yeah, it's great. I love it. It's really unique. It's really detailed in the way that the colors are layered and then how they add to the line work. It's just a beautiful book.
And it really fits the story, too.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been really popular on Tumblr, which is kind of where I found out about it, because everybody's been posting panels and pictures and character development and stuff from it, which I think is really cool. Tumblr has like sort of this weird relationship with comics where it is the perfect social network to share information about comics, and sometimes people will share it purely for the sake of the art, which I think is really cool. That's not something that you see somewhere else, where somebody's just like, oh man, this art's beautiful, I'm just going to share it without being a fan of the comic. I think that's really cool, and Wayward is one of those books that has been shared a lot because of that. And so I was really happy when I read it that it actually had a really great story. And my only issue with this book was that I felt like it took too long to develop the main character, and they could have done a little bit better, because by the end of it, I wasn't entirely in her camp yet. Like, I didn't know where I stood with her. But yeah, other than that, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think part of the issue with the main character is in the pacing of the story, because they're introducing a lot of elements in those first 5 issues, but so many of those are extraneous to the main character. They have to introduce her like anime Justice League of 4 characters. They have to introduce 3 villains, and monsters, and explain that she came from Ireland to Japan and how she got there,
And all the stuff with her mom.
right. And well, I'm counting spoilers if you haven't read the book. It says at the beginning of every episode, but I feel like this is kind of a big one. I was counting her mom as one of the villains.
See, I wasn't quite sure that she was necessarily villainous.
Yeah, I don't know either, but she's clearly part of some kind of organization that's involved with villains.
Yeah, but it's not clear if it's the organization that is villainous or if there are villainous people within the organization.
Right. Yeah. So 3 people who may stand in her way of accomplishing her goals of being a normal person.
There you go.
And it has to do the like traditional anime school kid thing, where it's like, you're not really succeeding in your classes. You need to be paying attention more. I hope I find friends.
Yeah.
And people don't think I'm weird. Maybe you should dye your hair and people won't think you're a punk. Like, it does a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
In 5 issues. And yet at the same time, I feel like not enough has happened in a weird way.
It's definitely paced really slowly in a certain extent.
Yeah.
Just like the way that the main arc develops, because it's waiting for all of these ancillary things. And I feel like it would be a lot more effective if it had just like jumped into the deep end and just thrown all this stuff at you and let you go like, oh, well, I'm going to figure out what those turtle monsters are later. Like, it's not important to the story right now to learn about, they're Kappa and something's really weird with them and the city feels different and all of these others kind of ancillary things. Like, I think it might have worked better if it just jumped in and then kind of explained things later as it became important for you to know.
Which is a more manga-style way of telling it to you.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
So,
I mean, it's because it's playing with all of these manga character types and story tropes, but it's telling the story in a very Western sort of way, which is often a lot more meandering.
Yeah, and so I say that it's the something to do with the pacing. Because I don't feel like the pacing's bad. I just feel like something's off. And I'm having trouble putting my finger on it.
Right.
But I think it's very much that, like manga influence, manga art-ish style, manga setting, but, like, Western sensibility. Yeah. It's like something feels out of place.
Well, I would be willing to say that it's bad insofar as we both or all went, like, this seems weird.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily to say that it's very bad, but just that, like, maybe this could have been done more effectively.
Yeah, and
it feels weird.
Yeah. And the other part... Oh, sorry, Cade, go ahead.
I actually didn't have a problem latching onto the main character. I kind of did right near the beginning, although it could be because I'm also Irish. But I think it did feel a little jarring because there were a lot of things going on.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't think that detracted from getting attached to the characters, because for me, I guess I look at things in a very Western way, where I am you have shown me who the main characters are, and I am learning about them, so these are the 4 characters that I care about the most.
Yeah.
I didn't really need to be pulled in much more than that because I'm already with it.
Right.
But there was a lot of shit going on.
Yeah.
Like, right from the beginning.
And a lot of times I like it when a lot of stuff comes and just hits you right out of the gate. And, like, kind of what Toby was saying is, like, just really go for it, though. Like, drop me in. Because that whole first issue, like, a good half of that, it takes place in the character's caption boxes in her head.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know? And the other side of that, I think, is we do only have 5 issues. 6 technically have come out so far, but 5 in the first trade. And that's, to me, that's not enough to really judge, like, how the pacing is working.
Yeah.
Because if the series is only going to be 10 issues long, then they really needed to gun for all this stuff, like, right out of the gate. You know what I mean? But if it's going to be 150 issues, maybe too many plot threads all at the beginning. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like, it kind of is going to take me until...
I think on a certain point, though, if you're presenting this as something for monthly consumption, you can't 100% say, well, to really appreciate this, like, you should read all 150 issues when they're all out in 15 years.
Right.
Like, you need to at least present on some level a monthly one issue, like, this is something that you can read and enjoy from month to month.
Man, yeah. I'm not sure that that's...
Like, it doesn't have to be 100% one way or the other.
Yeah.
But there at least has to be some kind of balance there. Like,
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many issues there have been of a Marvel comic or a DC comic where the store, like, you buy an issue and it is 100% middle.
Right.
Like, a character is at one place at the beginning of the story, and at the end of the story, they're in the exact same place.
Bendis.
That is the name that I was working my way up to.
Yeah.
Like, I've been reading Guardians of the Galaxy the last couple of years, and I've given up on it at this point. But I was looking back, and I'm like, what has actually happened in the last 2 years worth of issues? What villains have they fought? What have they accomplished?
They brought Angela into the universe.
Yeah. They did it. They, like, went to the planet of the symbiotes where nothing happened.
Yeah.
They had a long conversation.
Yeah.
Like,
Tony Stark hooked up with Gamora.
That happened before, too, though. I mean...
Like, nothing significant has happened, because it's just nothing happens. Like, they're standing around and talking.
Yeah.
Like, on a certain level, something has to happen in every issue.
Yeah, I think that's the balance the modern comics try to strike now, is writing for the 6-issue arc, or 5-issue arc, while also still having enough happen in each issue that you want to buy it monthly.
Right.
As well as, like, the trade reading well. It's hard to do, though. I mean, like, that's like masterclass writing, comic writing, I think.
I would call that journeyman level comic writing. Like, on a certain level, you should be able to tell a story that I want to read. Like, that is workman level, like, I work in comics. Here is a comic. Do you read it? Do you enjoy it? Do you want to buy another one? Okay.
And I think that if we're talking about indie comics like this, like, yeah, I do think that is, like, bare minimum, like, that is absolutely what they have to do to get me to buy their book. But writers at Marvel and DC, like, oftentimes will just, an issue needs to come out. So regardless of whether it's fantastic or not, like, your job is to put out 22 pages a month, or 20 now if you're Marvel. Put out 20 pages a month, and because characters X, Y, and Z are on the cover, like, it will sell. Your job is to get them to come back next month. And telling a complete single story, often doesn't make them want to come back next month. And so writers like Bendis are really successful because they get a whole lot of people really excited about a series like New Avengers, and then they just kind of, like, make that series happen for 6 years without too much really happening. And then they make a lot of money off that, and then Marvel makes a lot of money off that.
Or Kirkman's Invincible had a lot of filler issues too.
Yeah, and I think that's, I don't know. I think there's a divide there, like a balance you have to strike.
Right, and that's what I'm saying, is that it's not 100% in any one direction. It's you have to balance these elements out, and in this particular series, like, I feel like that balance was a little bit off.
Yeah, I do like that he uses at least cliffhangers at the end of the issue to get me to want to read the next one. Like, I found myself reading this pretty much in one sitting. I reread it for this, and getting to the end of the issues and being like, oh, man, and then, like, wanting to immediately move to the next one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And at some point, I think that that's, in a lot of ways, enough to get me excited about coming back next month. Pacing issues aside. Like, I do totally agree that there are some pacing issues in here and that some stuff definitely could have been handled better, but it is a setting I like enough. The characters are characters I'm at least curious enough about that I want more.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe this will all fall totally flat when it's like, hey, it's all questions and nothing ever gets answered. Like, I don't know if this is Lost syndrome or not, but like,
and that's exactly the thing. Like, Lost had the wrong balance insofar as like every episode, you're like, oh man, so much happened. I can't wait to get all these answers. And every single episode was like that. So by the time you got to the end of the series, like, you were like, wait, when were the answers?
Yeah.
Like, there were so many things that they just never resolved.
And that the show writers have definitely come out and said, like, the show philosophy was for every door you close, you open two more. Mm-hmm. And so, like, your answers are actually just new questions at that point.
Right.
And I hope this isn't like that. I really do. Because some of it is like, oh man, they got to that monk that was controlling all the guys in the subway and they like trapped him down there. And then they get there and he's like, oh, I'm not really the bad guy. And then it like cuts away to like something mysterious. Like,
yeah,
I
definitely feel like he has a direction he's going.
Yeah.
Like, we have this secret organization that the monk was part of, and like her mother was involved, and what are the threads and who are weavers? And,
right.
Like, you get the sense that there's structure there.
Yeah.
Like, he's building towards something.
Yeah.
But like the whole thing with Rori cutting herself in the bathroom, like, that's a cool story beat, and I think that that's something that's really important.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that it should happen in issue 3. I feel like that's something that should happen in issue like 10.
Yeah.
Where you're really invested in the character and you're like, oh my God, this is a big emotional hit. Whereas I read that scene and I was like, oh, okay.
Well, and I guess that's what I'm saying about like how long is the series going to be? Because like if, yeah, I agree. Like, if this were a longer series, like, I would save some of that stuff. I would hold it back. I would say, I like the moment where they hint at it, where she, like, reaches across the table to her mom, and her sleeve starts to push up, and she, like, freaks out and pushes her sleeve back down, because you're like, oh, what's that on her arm? Like, it starts to get you curious about stuff. Mm-hmm. But if the whole series is only 10 issues, like, issue 10 might be too late to bring that up. And they haven't said how long it's going to be yet.
My fear with this, especially in how they've covered things that have come up so far, is that they're not going to resolve her self-harm, and that's something that it needs to be addressed. I'm glad it's being brought up in a story about this protagonist who you are supposed to want to root for and things like that, but I just don't know so far if I have enough invested in her that it's like, okay, well, I see why she does this. I see why this is an issue. Well, it's obviously an issue. I see why this is her resolution to her issues because of this, that, and the other. And I want to see her character growth. Like, I want to see her character growth at this point because I want to see how they handle this incredibly important issue, especially for young kids and teenagers. My biggest fear is that it won't get handled the way it should be, and then 2-3 trades in, we're gonna have 13-year-olds picking this up, and it's going to be seen as, like, cutting is going to be seen as this artistic sort of, oh, well, this character does it, and it's not handled well, and it's not addressed in a way where it's like, no, this is a horrible thing. This should not be your answer. Well, there's help. Yeah, things like that. And I want this to be handled and addressed well. And the way that the story has been covered so far, it has me a little worried because I don't want their answer to be sort of glossed over. And then we're going to talk about the Kappa. Right. Like.
Well, and also, there is a trend in Japanese manga right now where blood is often used as like a power, and so many characters will like self-harm to get powers, right? It's just like this weird trend that's going on right now. Attack on Titan has it.
Kill la Kill.
Kill la Kill has it. Beyond the Boundary has it. Like, there's a lot of shows that have it. Where like Dead Man Wonderland has it. Like, there's just it's a theme, and because it's presented in such a realistic manner at the beginning of this story, where she's self-harming, I'm worried that it's going to be part of her powers.
Right.
And that would be like maybe the wrong way to go about talking about self-harm in a comic book.
Yeah.
Because in the way it's handled in those manga and those anime, it's very much like, I do this in the middle of battle and it like saves my life. Like, this isn't something I do in private alone in my bathroom. Like, this isn't... And this Wayward handles it much more like actual self-harm.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, and it is a little worrisome.
Yeah.
Especially because they haven't yet given us a reason for it.
I mean, and
other than that, she's disturbed.
Right, and I don't know that there'll ever be like an outright reason is like, this is why Rori started.
Well, is it from depression? Is it from anxiety attacks?
Yeah.
Is it due to the divorce? There's a lot of things that it could be. And I do think that it needs to address... Well... Except you get different things out of it due to the different... I've been in therapy since I was 7 for various things, and one of them in my teens was self-harm, and I had to learn about all the different reasons people do it, what each different person gets out of it is different, and I really hope that... and I got the impression from... the letters page, when he did address it to one of the fans writing in, that he is going to address it in a mature manner as something serious.
That's good.
I just hope that he does it soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I am really excited for this series. 6 just came out.
Yeah, last week, yeah. 2 weeks ago, I think, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
I think the 27th.
Yeah. Definitely going to keep following this series because I think maybe it's pacing issues, just kind of growing pain, sort of.
Yeah.
Well, I did. I looked at the next issue, and apparently, like, it's a start of a different arc because it starts with like a new main character.
Yeah, it's another character in the story. I mean,
right.
Like, it's from her point of view.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's not clear if it was like just that issue that was going to be that way, or if like she's going to be the point of view character for like an entire arc now.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious.
I mean, it is interesting to watch and see how it goes.
Yeah, I'm on board from this $10 Image trade.
And
absolutely.
If Jim Zub, he worked on Skull Kickers before this. If that's any indication, that book was like almost 40 issues. So...
Yeah, he's been working on that for a while.
Yeah, I feel like he might... And that book had a lot of growing pains in the beginning, for sure. Those first couple issues are kind of rough to read.
Yeah, I read, I think, the first issue, and I was like, eh.
Yeah.
And then just never progressed with it.
And it gets significantly better, which is the cool thing about indie comics, I think, is you kind of get to watch people grow. Specifically, like, even Kirkman, like, even Invincible, I talk about the beginning of that book having a lot of growing pains.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm excited to see where it goes to.
I was really interested in the way Ayane kept changing appearances.
Yeah.
I dug that. I really liked that.
Yes.
And I liked that she identified the cat.
Yeah.
That was a powerful moment for me.
She identified the cat?
Yeah, the cat looks at her with the green eyes.
Oh.
And she says...
Well, I got the impression that Ayane was like a combination of many cats. Like the general cat spirit, like all coming together. And I was wondering if maybe her appearance changed based on like which cats she's an amalgamation of, or if it was like just a preference thing, like she changes her appearance.
I think she shapeshifts. I also think she is a cat.
I also think she's too ditzy to realize she doesn't look the same that she did before.
I think Ayane is like
very fair.
Literally like a shapeshifting cat that turns into like a human person.
Okay.
That's my theory, just based on the fact that like immediately after battle she wanted milk.
Well, I'm not sure if it was at the end of issue 5 or if it was when I was looking at issue 6, but you see like all of these cats and they kind of like combine into a gestalt to form Ayane.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like,
that's in 6.
Okay. Then sorry everybody, spoilers.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, like, is she one cat or is she like many cats?
And I think
like,
she can be
both.
both.
Like spirit cat.
Yeah, or like the spirit of cats.
Yeah.
In the general sense. Like she is all cats.
She is the spirit of the musical.
Cats. Starring Mr. Mistopheles.
Starring
No, I got
Tugger.
the feeling that it was kind of both.
That's the worst one.
It's the only one I know.
Those are Mr. Mistopheles is also a cat, I think.
Okay.
But yeah, that is the worst name for a cat ever.
Rum Tum Tugger?
Yeah, I'm sorry, anyone who named their actual cat Rum Tum Tugger, but it's the fucking worst.
Well, you should apologize to Andrew Lloyd Webber for not liking his name.
Never apologize to Andrew Lloyd Webber. Cade, I'm sorry. We were interrupted by the musical cats.
That's fine. No, I got the impression that it's both. She is all the cats, and then she's also single cats. Because, like, the one time when the building collapses and they lift the one stone and she runs out.
That is true.
Yeah.
She is one cat, but I think, like, her power will spread to other cats, and then it, like, becomes
She also, like,
group.
Has the same personality she's like a singular spirit maybe, but like can be comprised of many things.
Yeah.
Well, she says something along the lines of like wherever a cat is, there I am.
Yeah.
Or something like that. So I think maybe spirit of cats or teleports through cats. Something.
Yeah, maybe she can control each individual cat to be where she needs it to be.
Maybe
and then she just like switches.
Yeah.
Or sometimes a lot of cats will be near each other and she'll just take the powers of all of them.
Maybe she'll combine all of the cats to form Voltron.
That is how Voltron works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also liked Spirit Eater guy, like from a character design perspective. I thought his appearance was really cool.
Oh yeah, I can't wait to learn his deal.
Yeah.
I like his
like when he got the power.
Blue veins and stuff that show up on him.
Like, for something that was done by a Westerner for a Western market, like, this does manage to hit a lot of manga tropes.
Yeah.
I did notice that.
It's definitely, and I don't want to sound like I'm saying this in the wrong way, but it definitely feels like it comes from someone who watched a lot of anime.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean that he's like lifting stuff directly from anime, but like that it is a massive influence on his both character design and
this book has a lot of.
It's a love letter to anime and Japan and different mythology and culture references.
I guess what I'm saying is that there are a lot of subtle cultural references and concepts that aren't necessarily as clearly transmitted as more of the broader ideas. And I feel like he captures a lot of those. Mm-hmm. Like, you have to have really studied closely a lot of not just like watching a lot of anime and reading a lot of manga, but actually going into the ideas behind them and the things that they are referencing on a cultural level to really do something like this.
One of the books I was reminded of when I was reading this, and this is going to go way back to when Matt McGinnis was on the show, but the book Supermarket.
Yeah.
That we read.
Yeah, I guess.
The whole kind of kids lost in the world.
It's definitely a similar kind of fish out of water story.
Yeah.
And I also like that it has kind of a similar, like, parents doing stuff that you don't know about and you won't learn about until you're older, but, like, they did shit and it affects your history and past and whatever.
Well, it's also a very, like, manga thing for parents to just be absent because they're, like, working all the time and they're just, like, kids are by themselves a lot of the time, and it's something that's not necessarily gone into a lot in manga. And then this kind of like takes that and is like, oh yeah, the reason that she's gone all the time and works weird hours isn't just a story contrivance. Like, she is working on things.
Well, it's also not. The other thing about Japan is like it's relatively safe. I don't want to say it's much safer than America, but it is like relatively safe. And if you know where you're going and where to get there, like, it can be safe. So something that I saw in Japan that I have never, ever seen on any other public transport before are, like, 8-year-olds boarding by themselves. and just like riding the train by themselves in one of the most crowded cities in the world to school. Just like 2 8-year-olds will just get on the train by themselves and like pull their DSs out and start playing.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's like that. You would never see that on a New York subway.
Nope.
Like you just would not. One, someone would steal that DS because everyone in New York is a thief. I'm sorry.
2, somebody would steal that kid.
Yeah, it's just a different culture. I mean, you walk down the streets, you see groups of people with no parental supervision, and I feel like in the U.S. it's very much like.
Well, you see all these stories these days of like a parent lets their kid walk half a mile to a local park and back again, and then the police show up, and then Child Protective Services show
absolutely.
up because a child was unsupervised for 5 seconds.
Yeah,
that was not the case when I was a kid. I used to walk all over the city.
Me either. And I think that it's just like...
I'm sorry, I personally find this to be a very upsetting topic.
Yeah, I think it's media... I don't know, that like media fear-mongering.
Yeah, well, like crime has been falling like a rock for the last like 20 or 30 years. Like we live in the safest time in America that there's been in like the last 50 years.
Right.
But the media does blow things out of proportion.
Right, yeah. Like, we feel like it's not safe out there because of the media, right? But you and I and Cade, we all grew up in the 80s, which is like that's like crime spree central. Like, everyone thought the world was ending because if crime continued to go up in the 80s, it was like, that's it. That's the apocalypse.
That's why you had works like Watchmen, where it's like, the inner cities are full of crime and gangs and drugs.
RoboCop and Lethal, like every action movie from the 80s where it's like street crime is prevalent, like it's because that's what people at least perceived was going on.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That the only foreseeable future for a world of 1980s Detroit was the future in RoboCop, where it's like street crime will just get out of control until we need a robot cop.
Which sadly isn't too far off.
I mean
Detroit's kind of in bad straits.
But
Detroit.
I don't think crime is out. White collar crime destroyed Detroit. Anyway,
opposite problem.
Enough politics, but it is odd that in America, like it's not okay for kids to just like get on the bus and ride the bus and stuff. But in Japan, you see it all the time.
But and
it's not just absentee parents. It's just like you don't spend a lot of time at home in Japan because
your house is tiny.
I mean that happens, and also just like why would you stay at home? Yeah, like you live in a big city, and this isn't. I'm sure this isn't like true of all of Japan. I was only in Tokyo, but like it's a big city. There's a lot of fucking shit to do. Like, why would you not go out and do it? Like, there's so much cool shit to do, and there's like arcades everywhere. And when you're a kid, you just like go. Like, if I were 10 in Japan, there's no way I would ever sit at home. You know, there's just too much cool stuff to see.
I've talked to a couple of people who have either read this book or flipped through it, and they're saying that it's very much so what Japan is like, or at least what their experience was as somebody who was visiting Japan.
The one thing is it doesn't look like the Japan that I visited. And I don't know if that's just... She's in Tokyo.
Right.
She flew into Narita.
Well, she does mention, like, going to places that the tourists don't go and seeing things that they don't see.
But she goes to Shibuya, and it doesn't look like the Shibuya that I went to. And when I watch manga, or when I watch anime... There's always scenes in there where it's like, I feel like I've been there.
Right.
Like, I will look at it and I'll go, I've been to that train station. And I haven't. It's just like most of them look like that because it's how they fucking built them.
But it is possible that the artist just had to go by visual styles that he looked up on the internet.
And so that's like the one thing is at no point do I get like... I get nostalgic for things that she does and says, like... When she flies into Narita, I was like, oh, I didn't fly. I flew into Haneda. And, like, now I have nostalgia for flying into that airport. When she buys shit out of vending machines, I'm like, oh, there are vending machines everywhere. And I never get nostalgic from the art. But when I watch anime, I absolutely get nostalgic from like watching people cross train tracks and seeing the way that houses are built in Japan. So I don't know. That was one thing.
Like, I don't want this to sound like a knock on the artist because I really did, like, it's very well done. But the art felt a little bit cold to me. Just in terms of, like, it's very kind of regular and realistic. Like, there's not a lot of exaggeration or, like, it's not strongly stylized. It reminded me kind of Revival and the conversation that we had around that.
Yeah.
Like, especially, like, the way that things are lit.
Yeah.
Like, I really like the colors, but in terms of lighting, like, I felt like it would have been a lot cooler if, like, you'd seen reflections of, like, neon signs on everything and different color tones depending on where they were.
I think some of the lighting effects are really cool. I agree with you, though. I think that sometimes the mood could be better set with color. I was going to say that this really reminds me of Jamie McKelvey, with the exception of the color. Because, like, the line work is really thin and delicate and, like, detailed in the way the McKelvey's is. But, like, color, it's not, he doesn't have as good a colorist as that team has.
Well, it's similar to McKelvey, but McKelvey uses much thicker lines.
Yeah. But it's, like, they're delicate lines, though.
Yeah, well, they're like very sharp and precise.
Yeah, that's how I would describe them.
And this feels like a lot more detailed.
It feels more manga-like, obviously.
Yeah.
The colors change my perception, and the angles at which things are done is very Western, but I love his creature designs.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
love them.
Like, from a design perspective, it feels very reminiscent of manga, but like the panel layouts and the angles, like you were saying. Like
when I see the demon ghost guy when they're getting the fourth member of the Anime Justice League,
right?
And he's just like stabbing through guys and like all wispy and bone like. I was like, that is sweet. That looks cool.
Yeah, the bone ghost was super cool looking,
and the kappas all look really rad. I like how they look like Ninja Turtles, but also still look like demons.
So, there was actually something I noticed about reading the single issues, and this, I don't remember when we had this discussion, but we had a discussion about single issues getting more bonus material than the trades these days.
I was talking about it in reference to Lazarus, but I don't remember what episode it was on.
Right. Okay, yeah, these single issues had a lot of bonus material in them. Mm-hmm. And I haven't got my hands on the trade to see how much of that is in there.
Well, Kayleigh happens to have the trade sitting right over here.
Yeah,
it looks like it has
it.
Yeah, it looks like it has all the sketches and stuff that are at the back of the singles.
Yeah, it has a lot
and
of
the stories and
letters
history.
Yeah, it has a lot of information in the back. Maybe not everything that was in the singles, but it feels pretty complete to me.
Because each single seems to have about 5 pages of extra bonus material, like 3 or 4 pages of like, oh, here's magical foxes of Japan. This is why magical foxes are important in Japan. And then there's like a letters page. So it's like 5 pages total. So I don't know that the trade has the letters pages, but I think it has everything else.
I'm flipping through it. It does not have everything else, but it has a lot of it.
Cool.
It's missing some of the histories of Japan and where these monsters might fall in.
Yeah, because each one has kind of a cool amount. There's like, well, some of the issues, I guess, just have letters, too.
Yes, because some of them are long issues. One of them even has 31 pages of actual story.
Yeah.
Another thing that was really kind of interesting to me is the way that he seemed to keep lampshading certain things. Where I'd read something and I'd be like, that's weird. And then like a page or two later, a character would be like, hey, this is weird.
Yeah.
Like her name.
Yeah.
Rori Lane.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine a worse name to have in Japan.
Yeah, exactly.
It
For people
struck me as very odd.
Not familiar, the Japanese L sounds more like a Western R.
Yeah, like whatever that kanji or kata character is, it's like a kind of a mix of R and L.
Yeah, you form it by putting your tongue on the roof of your mouth, which is not how you say a Western L, because your tongue goes down.
Yeah.
Everyone in the room is now making tongue sounds, and I can hear it in the headphones, and it's gross. But that's what makes it so difficult, because to switch between R's and L's and the way that you say them.
Yeah, like they'd make a joke about somebody calling her Lolly.
Right, yeah.
Which in Japan, it's like they have lolly goths.
Right.
Which are kind of more...
It's like Lolita.
Okay,
comes from the word Lolita.
Anyway... Yeah, it's kind of like a baby doll, like lacy gowns, kind of Victorian style goth.
Yeah, Yeah,
and it was funny to me, but it was weird in that he like did it. It felt like he did it a number of times, where he's like, "I'm just going to throw this thing in here because it makes my story more amusing, and I'm just going to justify it by having the characters mention how it's weird."
Yeah. Is there another? Do you have another example? I wasn't thinking of her hair, but I don't know that that's what you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, her name was the main one that I was thinking of off the top of my head. I can't remember what the other examples were, but there were just random things where I was like, that feels a little contrived.
Yeah.
But,
I don't know.
It's not a big deal. It's just something I noticed. I don't know.
I'm still kind of enthralled by the series in a weird way. I'm not as like blown away by it as when I read the first issue.
Yeah.
And I think, going back to what we were originally talking about, I think it's the pacing, and I think there are too many characters in this book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a weird thing to say for someone, especially for me, because I love books with just just tons of characters packed in. Like I
feel like if he just like threw everything in there and then just waited a while to explain things. Kind of like what we were talking about with Ravine and Umbral. The way that Anthony Johnston introduces concepts in Umbral and then just lets them sit there. And then like eventually explains it when it becomes actually important or feels organic to the story.
Well, and he doesn't do it by just being like, we're not going to talk about that now. Like something comes up that creates tension, so the characters cannot talk about it. Like they're interrupted by a brigade of soldiers or whatever. Right. It feels really organic to the story, the way you learn about that world.
Yeah, like honestly, I just feel like it's the order in which things are presented.
Yeah.
Like he's introducing too many little story threads at once when it should be a little bit more focused at the very beginning.
Also, that first issue has some of the coolest fight scenes in it. Like they fight the Kappas, and the cat lady shows up, and then she uses the red thread to do some like crazy hardcore parkour up the wall, which we've yet to see her do again.
It just doesn't come up again.
And I was like, is this character gonna like become a superhero? And now she's got like a trainer that's gonna like show her what's going on, and she's gonna fight like mystical Japanese demons. And I was like, I'm totally on board. And then the minute you start introducing all of these other characters, it like really detracted from the main character.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah. I feel like it's something that I'm interested in reading more of, but I don't think that I'm going to follow it super close. Like I'm going to wait for maybe even the whole rest of the series, depending on how long it is, but at least a couple of more trades to show up so I can just kind of absorb it all at once, and that pacing problem will be less of an issue. Yeah. I feel like if I was reading this month to month, I would have read it for 2 months, and then I would have stopped reading it.
Yeah, that's kind of what happened to me. I recently caught back up on it so that I could talk about the trade, I think, or I don't remember what issue I was talking about on top of the stack, but like I did that. I read the first 2, and then I like forgot about it for a couple issues. And I think it reads a lot better in the trade. So
yeah, I mean, it's definitely a good comic. I enjoyed it, but I don't know. I feel like on a certain level, we have a problem now with there being too many good comics. Insofar as if something's not immediately really good, I'm like, well, I could continue to read this, or I could read all these other really good things.
And that's the hard thing about like collecting comics monthly or voting with your dollar in that way, is like, what's the thing I most want? And that's what gets my money. Yeah. So it is a very competitive market right now, but that's good.
Yeah. I mean, it's good, but it makes me kind of sad because I feel like there are things that I would read and enjoy if they had time to develop. And I feel like this is the kind of thing where over time it could develop into something really, really cool. But I don't know if it'll necessarily get that much time if there are a lot of people out there like me who go, well, it's kind of interesting.
Question for you guys, I guess. There are comedians out there, stand-up comics, that talk about how technology has changed the way they do comedy, in so much as a stand-up comedy, a lot of what you do is create a social web presence. And are jokes good enough to save for your set versus are they worth blowing on social media? Like, is this a Twitter joke or is this like part of my stand-up act joke? My question is, now that there are so many different ways to distribute comics, like web comics, digital comics, monthly comics, like ongoing trade paperback series like Adam Warren does with Empowered, do you think that some series fail specifically because they chose the wrong format to come out in?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would definitely say yes.
Yeah.
Many comics that fail in print media would have been great webcomics.
Yeah.
And also vice versa. Sometimes webcomics don't get the traction that they could have, and the stories can never be completed because they're not in print.
Yeah. Well, and with stuff like Comixology Submit, where you can take your like ongoing webcomic, collect it into like digital packages, and then sell it on Comixology, like I feel like there's less of a risk to doing stuff like a weekly webcomic because there are more outlets for you to like get money from that, like with Patreon, with selling hard copies, like stuff like Dave and even Earthworld coming out in like trades. I feel like webcomics are the way to go on a lot more stuff. Do you think they're... I don't know.
I think that the one caveat to that is that with webcomics, like, you have to hit a schedule. You have to be able to release pages every couple of days, at least every once a week.
Yeah.
And for certain series, like, that's difficult.
Well,
and again, you have that pacing issue of, like, month to month, like, you want each issue to have a story beat in it.
Right.
When you're doing a webcomic, like, every page has to have a story beat to it. Like, if you read Order of the Stick, which is a webcomic that I really, really love, every update, sometimes it's one page, sometimes it's 2 or 3 pages, but every update is its own little self-encapsulated arc with a beginning, middle, and end. And, like, you can see that, like, when you're reading the collections. And I think that there are stories that would benefit from coming out on a trade basis, like Adam Warren's Empowered. Like, I think it would read really differently if he was having to put out a page every day or every couple of days versus being able to do an entire 200-page book and then put it out as one entire story.
My 2 counter arguments to that are you have to do the same thing in monthly comics, though. Like, keeping a schedule and making sure that things actually come out on time is a huge detriment to whether or not your book succeeds or not. I was recently talking to a comic book creator.
However, when you are doing a print book, especially if it's published by a big company like Image, they are helping you promote the book, whereas a webcomic you do not have help promoting.
And that's a totally different issue. I agree. Like, self-promotion is really hard for a lot of people, but like at the same time, I was recently talking to someone, and I can't name who it was because I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but they were talking about a book and that their numbers were like pretty mediocre for an Image book. And I was like, really? Like, it's such a good series. Like, what's holding you guys back? And it was like, the artist is constantly late. And that doesn't seem like a big deal when you have an indie book, because it's not like when a Superman issue doesn't come out. Like, it doesn't seem like as big of a deal, but it's the same kind of thing as a webcomic. Like, if you say you're going to put something out every month and then, or every day, like a webcomic, and you miss a day.
Well, I'm not even talking about like necessarily hitting a schedule. What I'm saying is, like, if I've got a monthly book and it's 20 pages, I could spend 5 or 10 pages like very slowly building to a moment.
Right.
And like really ramp up that tension, because every page is right out after the last one. If I'm a webcomic and my update schedule is one comic every day, Monday through Friday, and I have like a 10-page bit, that's 2 weeks where every day nothing happens in my comic, because it's very slowly building to a moment that I'm trying to hit.
And that's my second counter argument, I guess, is like, are there not comics that come out like with multiple page counts on a specific day? Like, instead of coming out one every page every day, did they not come out like 5 on a Friday?
Warren Ellis did that with Freak Angels, and that was unusual.
Yeah, I really liked that style. Most of the time,
it's like 5. It's like either daily, like 3 times a week, like once a week, or it's just whenever the artist is done with like a section. They'll like upload 15 pages.
But
and that was my other thing.
Doing one each day makes a 20-page comic book each month. It's the same.
Yeah.
If you do one
weekday,
page
right?
a day. Yeah, one each weekday.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I understand.
But each of those pages needs to be special to stand on its own.
Right, unless you're doing like the releasing 20 pages a month.
Yes.
Once a month kind of model. And because I think
But a lot of people don't do that for their webcomics.
Yeah.
Or a lot of readers won't wait around. They'll forget about it.
Yeah.
Because there's so many webcomics out there.
Yeah.
That they could just be tuning in instead.
Like every format has its benefits and its liabilities. Mm-hmm. And so I think that there isn't a one-size-fits-all model. Like, you can't say, like, everybody should do a webcomic that updates once a day or 3 times a week or whatever.
Right.
Because there are those stories and those storytellers who benefit from being able to tell an entire story in one block and just release that whole thing.
And I think the reason I bring it up is because Jim Zub may not be the biggest name in comics, but people do know who he is. And when he announced a new series, it was like a big deal. Like, oh, hey, here's Jim Zub. Is this not at least some way similar to when Brian K. Vaughan and Marcos Martin went ahead and did like The Private Eye as like digital issues? Like, wouldn't it be kind of a similar thing where it's like, oh, you make your name for yourself in print comics and then you transition to like a digital medium where you're now getting paid more per issue?
You could do that, but it doesn't work for everybody.
It used to be very much the opposite. Like, you get your name out there in digital and don't make a whole lot of money, and then you get to print, and that's where you make the money. Right. And you're right. Like, I feel like it's kind of switching around a little bit.
Yeah.
Especially with things like Patreon now.
Yeah. And so I guess it's just, you were saying, like, oh, I wish this had, like, more room to breathe. I kind of wish it was coming out in a time where, like, things weren't as good so that you had time to read it. And it kind of brought all that to mind, is like, with the changing times, comic book creators not only have to be great writers or artists, but they have to be like severely business savvy to figure out like what format is going to work best for the book.
Yeah,
and I wonder if being a webcomic would benefit this.
Yeah.
Where, you're the content itself is kind of a loss leader. Like, you're putting it out there regardless of whether people are paying for it or not. And then, you've got merchandise, you've got Patreon, you've got whatever your income streams are that are bringing in your money. And in that context, like, the barrier for entry becomes a lot lower. Mm-hmm. Like, there are a lot of webcomics that I read to this day that update on incredibly erratic schedules that aren't necessarily always the best, or are things that I wouldn't keep up with if I had to pay money up front in order to read them.
Right.
And I've followed a lot of content creators who started out being not that good and got better by doing it and continuing to do it. And I feel like I'm losing my train of thought here. I feel like the digital format really encourages people to be able to grow, where doing something in print, because you're paying upfront for it, like you have to be good and you have to like hit your mark right out the door.
Right. And especially when you're pricing something competitively to like Marvel and DC, it's like people expect you to be a pro. Right out of the gate. Mm-hmm. And with like what Kayleigh's talking about is like, I saw so many images of this book online long before the book even came out due to stuff like Twitter and Tumblr. Right. That like that kind of internet buzz can only help a webcomic. I mean, that essentially made Homestuck.
Like, it's interesting to me because when you switch to a format like what we're doing, or like what webcomics are doing, like, it encourages you to share it as widely as possible, because it opens you up for more people to come and give you money. Whereas with a traditional print retail model, like, you want to keep people out. Like, no, don't come and just take my comics. Like, you have to pay me to come here. Right. And it really alters the way that you think about the content that you're providing.
Yeah, and it also, because of music went through a revolution like this, in the 90s, essentially, with Napster, with like the content being widely available as free, and suddenly people who had been, oh no, you're not allowed to listen to my content without paying for it, like, had no choice but to go, I guess it's free and everyone has it. It changes your perception of what the art is worth.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of people that have grown up now that have actually never paid for music and like don't see it as something you should pay money for, which devalues the art and the artist, which is interesting.
Our friend Kenny Wisdom just posted a link on Twitter yesterday that I'll throw up on the show notes on the website, that was really interesting. It was a guy who creates a lot of online content talking about his revenue streams and advertising models versus Patreon. And it was incredibly informative and really interesting. So if anybody out there listening is interested in that kind of thing, I'm going to link this because I think it's very relevant to the conversation we're having.
Yeah. There's been a lot of studies done about what your perception is when you're allowed the like free entry into experiencing the media, and then like when someone suddenly asks you to pay for music, you're like, what? But music is free, like that. So and it could be detrimental to comics to be like, oh, webcomics, buy my physical copy. Like that could be detrimental.
He talks about CPM, which is the metric by which you measure how many people are looking at content. I'm not sure exactly what it stands for.
Clicks per minute?
I'm not sure I think it's clicks per something, but it's basically a measure of like this many people
clicks per money.
Yeah, looked at your content, and that determines like your advertising rate. Like on YouTube, I think it is clicks per minute, and it's like for every minute of content that somebody watches or whatever, like you get, or 1,000 people watch 1 minute of your content, that's worth $2 or whatever.
Yeah, it's actually a little bit more complicated than that. You used to be able to look. It used to be per views,
right?
And then that model was totally ruined, probably by the Reply Girls, although that's not confirmed. But
in any case, there's a complex metric, but it's basically an idea of like this many people are watching this content, you get this many dollars based on that,
right? And the idea is, if you keep people on YouTube longer than anyone else, you get paid more than other people. So not only is it that they're viewing your content, but then they're directly clicking on another video that you made.
Right.
So you get like essentially bonuses based on if they clicked through from your video to another one of your videos and kept watching, you get more money.
But like that $2 metric is the important one, because it's like for every 1,000 views you get $2. So if you get 10,000 views on a video, you made $20.
10,000 minutes watched.
Right. If you get,
which is different than how you
1 million minutes watched or whatever, you get 1 million views. Whatever the metric is,
it's
like you get
now
$2,000 from that video. So it's like if I can get a certain number of people to watch it, I'm going to be able to make a living off of it.
Right.
But like he went into what the effective CPM is of different things. Like on television, it's something like $18 or $20. For like an episode of a sitcom, or for a movie, it's like $250 per minute of going to the movie theater and shelling out your like $15 or whatever for a ticket,
minute?
Something like that. It doesn't really matter to the conversation, but the point is like if you have a decently sized audience and you can get like every person in that audience to pay $1,
right?
You know, like if I put out a video. And I have 15,000 people that watched that video, and every single one of them gave me $1. I made $15,000 for one video. And if that video took me a month to make, like that's still a decent living.
Right.
If that video took you 6 months, then you just made the average.
Yeah.
Right.
American.
But it's that issue of getting $1 basically per watch or per person that looks at your content,
right?
Because people don't want to pay for this stuff. Like they want to be like, oh, well, show me an advertisement or whatever, and that's how you get your money,
right? And
it's switching around because of things like Patreon,
right?
But it's a very fluid marketplace right now.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna call a pause because I really have to pee.
That's going in the episode, and we're also going to say no, and you're going to pee your pants on the air.
You can
That's
put it
not going to happen.
On the episode if you want. I had 2 cups of coffee at home, and then I went to Burial Grounds and had 3 cups of water, and then another coffee. So
really hot.
MCP pants over
here.
All right, pause. All right. So we got thoroughly off topic before Kayleigh had to pee in her pants, and so now you're welcome. We should do recommendations.
We should.
I don't remember what we were saying, but does anyone have anything to add about Wayward? I feel like we were done with that.
Oh, I did want to mention, I did find the things in the back of each issue I was talking about. They are essays by Zach Davison. Let me see here. Each issue will have special essays about mythology and culture of magic in Japan, written by Zach Davison, and They're actually really cool. They talk about Japanese culture and the way that they view magic and mythology. One of them is completely on the Japanese magical foxes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the one I was talking about earlier.
But it's
some of those are in the back of the trade, but
they weren't in Kayleigh's.
Well, at least the sketches and designs.
Oh,
but
yes, those were
not the
full articles. So
yeah, but those are pretty cool, and it does go back to what we were saying about the single issues do have not more in this case, but different back matter than the trade does.
And I'm curious because I know it'll probably I shouldn't say I know. It will probably end up, if they do a 2-volume hardcover, it'll probably end up in that. But I know that Image does con-exclusive hardcover variants of the first trades. And I know that I think Mannix bought the $30 Wayward hardcover because it's beautiful. But now I want to know if it has that back matter in it. Because that would be very cool.
We're going to have to hunt down Mannix.
I'll find him and ask him.
Well, he's in Montana, and it's legal to hunt man there.
Yes, it is. Also, he doesn't have a phone, so we can't get a hold of him.
Well, no, that means that he can't call for help.
Well, it means both of those things, Kayleigh. All right. But anyway, let's move on to recommendations.
Let's do that.
Kayleigh?
You're in the hot seat.
I am in the hot seat. Look at that. Changing it up.
Yeah.
So I brought Afterlife with Archie by Roberto Aguirre Sacasa, I think is how you pronounce it, and Francisco Francavilla. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I not a big Archie fan to begin with. It's just never really something I cared about. But
really,
so you didn't get the Archie Humble Bundle?
No, I didn't get the Archie.
And who are they gonna?
I mean, I know who they are. I know enough about it because of pop culture and whatnot.
I'm just giving you shit. I don't care about Archie either.
Yeah. I'm just surprised you don't love that love triangle.
Yeah, that's me.
I did love the one where they smoked a lot of pot and went in the mountains and got eaten by bears or something.
I assume that you're talking about the love triangle between Archie, Jughead, and hamburgers.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Or is it hot dogs that he loves?
He loves hamburgers.
I obviously have not read enough Archie.
You're talking about the love triangle between Jughead, hamburgers, and the Predator. As to be seen next month in Archie versus Predator.
But I found myself really enjoying this book and being really invested in the characters. And Mannix was the one who actually recommended it to me. And he was describing it as he wasn't too big on Archie either, but he found himself really invested in what happened to these characters. And so what happens is Jughead's dog dies in the first couple panels, and he brings him to Sabrina, says, please bring him back. And at first, Sabrina...
The teenage witch, Sabrina.
Yes, Sabrina the teenage witch. You should know who Sabrina is, even if you don't read Archie.
I assume everybody watched the classic 90s sitcom starring Melissa Joan Hart.
I'm sure they did.
Obviously. That was formative for me.
Yeah.
God.
I watched way too much of that show.
My mom loved that show.
I'm all about that show.
Who played her friend?
You're thinking of Clarissa Explained It All.
No.
I don't remember. I remember the antagonist was Libby. I have no idea what the actress's name was.
Okay.
But anyway, so she brings the dog back. Things go south.
Yeah.
Very, very quickly. Jughead turns into a zombie.
Yeah.
He then turns other people into a zombie.
Yeah.
They turn other people into zombies.
Yeah.
And then it's full out zombie outbreak.
Zompocalypse.
Yep. And it's good. I like it. It's a horror comic, but it's not over the top. All of the gore, the violence is very stylized and in a way that it's indicative of what's happening, but you don't feel disgusted by what's happening. And I think that's kind of nice. Because you can read it for oh, this is kind of creepy, or this is kind of, action-y, whatever, but you're not reading it and going, ugh, God, did they have to show that? I enjoyed it. I think it'd be cool to have a discussion about it.
Hold up the art, because the art's fucking unreal.
Cade, it was Soul Moon Fry.
No, open the page. Show the panels.
Thank you.
The listeners can't see.
Show it to the people who are voting.
That I'm holding.
It's so good. The art's like absolutely unreal.
Yeah, it's great.
That does not look like an Archie comic.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. No. It's like you're thinking of Archie and you're thinking of zombies, but this is not that.
I believe a new editor-in-chief took over Archie Comics.
Yes.
And has been like doing all kinds of crazy things, because there's this book. I think there's also a Sabrina book with like Cthulhu in it.
Yes.
There's one where there's a split timeline, one where Archie marries Veronica and one where he marries Betty.
Yeah, that was like a special.
And there's like a guy who was jumping back and forth between the timelines.
Mm-hmm.
I swear there's another one.
They're bringing back the Archie Adventures superhero comic characters. They're also doing Archie versus Predator. That's a real thing coming out next month.
Yeah.
And not a real thing, but my favorite thing was while they were doing that timeline jumping between Archie and Betty and Veronica, some fan made, who was really good at drawing Archie comics, made like a fake cover for a Archie dies and Betty and Veronica marry each other.
Nice.
And everyone got like super excited about it, and it wasn't real. And so I'm actually secretly hoping that it's like a Spider-Gwen situation.
Yeah.
Where like the outcry of fans on the internet makes a series happen.
Fingers crossed.
But Archie, when I was a kid, owned a lot of properties, or owned the licensing rights to a lot of properties, and did more stuff besides just the Archie and Betty and Veronica digests, because
that you see in the supermarket even today.
Yeah, because I read the Archie Adventures Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Archie Adventures Sonic the Hedgehog. So like they used to do more stuff then, and they still do Sonic and they still do Mega Man. Yeah, Mega Man. But
Archie has been really changing things up.
Yeah.
The art in this is incredible. I just flipped through it. A few panels really stuck out at me. I wish Walking Dead was drawn like this.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd probably like it if it was.
I still think that the writing.
I like the new Walking Dead after the New Beginning thing. I recommended it on the show, but I wish it was drawn like this, and I wish it was colored like this. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, the art on this is absolutely unreal. It's part of the reason I picked it up. I told the real story of why I picked it up on the episode of Out of the Fridge that we talked about it for Halloween last year. So you can listen to that there too. But there's an issue in this book that literally like makes me want to cry. Like it is so sad, and I was just like, why did you do that to me? Mm-hmm. So there you go.
Yep.
All right.
Check it out.
Cade, what do you got?
All right, so I brought a DC book because we haven't talked about one in a long time.
It's been a few months.
That happens.
Part of that is because of the New 52. So I actually brought a newer DC book that does say New 52 on the cover, but is not really related.
Yeah.
There are a few references to the New 52 in it, but for the most part, it's self-contained. Mm-hmm. This is Scott Snyder and Jim Lee's Superman Unchained.
Yeah.
It's pretty damn good.
Yeah, 8 issues.
9 issues.
9 issues.
Yeah, there was a 3 or 4 month gap in between 8 and 9, so it went unfinished for quite. I mean,
that's Jim Lee for you.
It's Jim Lee, yeah, but it is now finished and in a trade.
Cool.
9 issues. And it's got some really good stuff in it.
This was the first book at DC that made me kind of notice that the seams were coming apart on the New 52 house style, because it's very clearly a pre-New 52 heroic, good person Superman, and not the asshole Superman we had seen up until this point. This started coming out pre the Jeff Johns run in the New 52 on Superman, so...
And I wanted to actually talk about the run that came right before that, the Jeff Johns, John Romita one, which was Superman Doomed. Mm-hmm. But it's way too heavily New 52. Like every issue has reference to something going on in another book, and I couldn't even keep it straight.
Yeah.
And I usually forgive DC for that.
Yeah.
But I couldn't this time. So Superman Unchained.
Mm-hmm. And it was self-contained, so no crossovers or anything. You can just read it beginning to end, and it has a beginning and an end, which is cool.
That's nice.
For a New 52 book.
Yeah, and it's actually pretty good. So the story is that Years before Superman landed, something else came from space.
Yeah.
And could it be Superman's downfall?
Yeah.
We don't know.
Bum, bum, bum.
Probably not.
Well,
But maybe.
It's
feel
New
like
52. They're shaking things up. You don't know.
I feel like that's the conceit of every comic book, because it's like, could this end the universe? Probably not, but maybe. But yeah, that book was pretty fun. Actually, Mannix is the one that told me to read that because he's such a huge Superman fan. But he hates the New 52 Superman. So
as he should.
Well, yeah. That's fair. But I was surprised. He's like, hey, did you read this? And I was like, what? No, it's New 52 Superman. What are you talking about? But yeah, so it comes recommended from Cade. And I liked it a lot. Well, I don't know if I want to say a lot. I liked it as well.
Yeah, I read it over the last week, and I was pleasantly surprised. And I did end up enjoying myself a lot more than I thought I would.
On a recent episode of Top of the Stack with Matt McGinnis, I think I was talking about how, like, it's sad that even the most mediocre book that comes out of DC, we're like, yeah! Because at least it's not just garbage like everything else. So,
it's not garbage, it's just crap.
yeah, it's like at Marvel, it would be like not that great of a book, but at DC, it's like, oh my god, a breath of fresh air, a mediocre book. Anyway, Toby, what would you like to recommend this week?
So the book I'm going to pitch kind of ties in a few different ways with the conversation that we've been having.
Yeah.
And it's a work that I feel very conflicted about, despite the fact that I desperately love all of the creators on this book. And I got to the end and I was like, I like a lot of this, but it still disturbs me intensely on a deep and fundamental level.
Are you saying mayhaps that you had misgivings?
Did you have misgivings about this one, Toby?
I had misgivings. This is an original graphic novel published by Marvel Comics that came out last week. I am pitching Avengers: Rage of Ultron.
Yeah.
Written by Rick Remender with art by Jerome Pena with Pepe Larraz and color art by Dean White, which is essentially the team that did Uncanny X-Force, which is one of my favorite Marvel books from the last decade. So good. You definitely, if you haven't listened to the episode where we talked about it, you should go back and listen to that. But yeah, I'm really conflicted about this book. There's so much I love about the characterization, and yet so many problems I have with the story and the way that it fits in with Marvel continuity.
Now, did you say Age of Ultron?
No, Rage of
Okay.
Ultron.
Like anger.
Yes, this is an original graphic novel that came out from Marvel just last week.
Yep.
And essentially it's a story about Ultron and his relationship with Hank Pym.
Yeah.
And Ultron is like off in deep space and he is returning to Earth for the first time in many years. Since Ultron is not an individual, but he's like splintered himself some ridiculous number of times. So they kill one Ultron and another one crops up.
Right. Like a Hydra.
Yeah.
Like
an AIM.
Not
Like
to
a
be
Horcrux.
not to be confused with Age of Ultron, the movie coming out, or Ultron Forever, which is a single issue that came out last week as well.
At the beginning of a series.
Yeah. So.
Or the comic Age of Ultron.
Right.
Or the forthcoming series Wage of Ultron about him getting a job in fast food.
That's called Dave.
Which you should read. And I pitched on the show.
Read Dave. But yeah. We talked about this on Top of the Stack.
Yeah, it's beautifully drawn. There's so much great characterization, but I really don't know how to feel about it. And so I want to talk about it.
Cool.
So, Avengers: Rage of Ultron.
And ongoing, or at least original graphic novels are something that we all kind of ask for more of. So
yeah,
I'm glad Marvel's been doing some lately.
In dovetailing very nicely with our conversation about formats and how comics come out.
Yeah.
Original graphic novels. They're
Sweet.
a thing. So, Chard, what do you got?
I got an image book. I don't remember what week it is. I need to look. I want to say 36 or 37.
You said 35 last week.
Okay.
Yeah, last week you said 35 or 36.
So I'm somewhere in the high 30s area now.
Approaching middle age.
Approaching middle age in the weeks of Image. What's crazy is I still have a lot of Image books that I haven't read and haven't decided if I'm going to pitch or not yet. So I was kind of worried when I started doing this that I wouldn't have enough to talk about, but I think I do. So this book I actually forgot came out in trade already. I was waiting for the trade to come out, and the trade came out February 25th because the trade only contains the first 4 issues. But they're really dense. It's a dense story, and it's really good. So I'm pitching The Fade Out Volume 1 trade paperback, and The Fade Out is written by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips, the team of Criminal. And This is a crime fiction story set in Hollywood in the 50s, and basically there's a lot that revolves around screenwriters and the Red Scare and fixers in Hollywood that will take problems that stars or people involved in the movie industry might be having or might have gotten themselves into, and basically tidies it up behind the scenes so that the press never hears about it. The idea being that, we see so many scandals with movie stars and stuff in today's world, but they were getting into just as many scandals back in the 50s. That's actually true. And one of the things that kind of prompted Brubaker to write this series is someone in his family, I don't know if it's by blood related or by marriage, but one of his older relatives actually used to be a fixer for Hollywood stars in kind of this golden age of Hollywood in the 40s, 50s. And so a lot of this is kind of this inspiration is drawn from some real stories that he heard about. But it's obviously a little larger in scale. Reminds me of stuff like L.A. Confidential, which is a fantastic crime novel. And it's really good. There's a lot of stuff that is brought up in this book that is stuff that was taboo in the 50s, like homosexuality, communism, stuff that doesn't seem that extreme now, but it's something that was a big deal in that era in Hollywood. So it touches on a lot of those subjects, but it's also there's a very deliberate crime that happened, and it plays with a lot of really cool narrative tropes in as far as the that kind of genre. So I really enjoy it. I think the art's awesome. If you've seen Sean Phillips draw crime stuff before, you know what to expect. But each one's a really thick issue. They printed some of these in oversized magazine size, which is really cool. So you can see the art a little bit bigger. I think it's mostly bigger margins on there, but they also put essays in the back of each of those issues that were pretty cool.
Nice.
And if you got the Image Humble Bundle a few months back when we were recommending tons of stuff from it, the first issue of that is in this.
Cool.
The first issue of this was in that.
Awesome. So you may have already checked it out a little bit. But this is the first 4. The 5th issue is coming out next week, I believe. So
nice.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
Kayleigh,
so,
what do you want to read?
I'm...
Manic Superman book.
I want to learn more about Ultron, and I don't want to support DC. So I'm going to go with Rage of Ultron.
I'm going to vote for Archie.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I think I'm going to vote for Superman Unchained.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I was not expecting that from you.
I was not either.
I was not expecting to say that.
Wow.
I tuned out of the New 52 after about the first 6 or 8 months. And occasionally people are like, oh, well, you should check this out. It's better than the usual piece of crap they churn out.
Yeah.
And I haven't done that at all. People have said, oh, you should check out Wonder Woman. And Superman Unchained is one of those books that people are like, well, it's pretty good comparatively. And so I'm kind of interested to see where things have gone.
See what that exactly means.
Yeah.
So I'm in the very interesting position of, 1, having to break a tie, but 2, having to break a tie between books I've read all of
Interesting.
And
so
every single book that you didn't bring.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can't vote for my own. I know.
No,
that.
but that's what I mean.
Yeah.
You can literally vote for any other book.
Right, and I can't make my book the one chosen, I guess, is what... I can't also do that. But, yeah, so now I have the interesting decision of, do I vote for my favorite one of the three, or do I vote for the one I want to talk about the most? Which is maybe different than my favorite? Because...
I don't know the answer to that.
You should always vote for your favorite.
You should vote for the one that's going to give the best conversation.
Well, that's the thing, is I've always said, vote for the one you want to read most. I've read all of these, so then vote for the one you want to talk about most. And that's tough. Because I do think the Superman Unchained is like, kind of was a breath of fresh air in the New 52, and maybe like the first linchpin to come out of that. But I also know that Rage of Ultron is like a really interesting story, and like, as someone who is not as versed in Marvel history, I want to talk about, and it's hard because if Joe's on the episode, I want to read Superman Unchained because I know that Joe is as big a Superman fan as I am, and so like he'll look at that as a critical Superman eye. But if Brant's on the episode, I absolutely want to talk about Rage of Ultron because I don't know anyone who like thinks about Marvel in the same way that Brant does. So now it's just a total crapshoot of who's going to be on the episode next week.
Do it in deposit and text them.
No, they won't know. It's
I will
such
hit
a
Joe in
crapshoot.
the knee with a crowbar.
It is such a crapshoot. So I want to talk about Afterlife with Archie so bad, but I already talked about it on the show.
But you can talk about it again.
I know. I think I have to go with Rage of Ultron.
Yes.
Please don't let me down, Brant. Please listen to this and know how much I want you to be there. Please magically fast forward to this moment and know that this is all... I'm counting on you.
I believe in Brant.
Kenobi, you're my only hope. That was kind of a stretch. All right.
Brandywand?
Yeah. Anyway, so Rage of Ultron.
Yes.
Next week. I just read it, so...
I also just read it, and
Ready to read it again.
I want to hear everyone else's input on it.
Art's awesome.
The art is beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
What I said, spoiler, what I said on top of the stack was that it is a really interesting Hank Pym Vision Ultron story.
Yes.
And less so an Avengers story.
Yes.
So
I agree with all of that.
We got that going for it. So.
I'm also very interested to see what happens in Avengers Ultron Forever. Because
that was sweet.
That very directly ties into Avengers Forever, which we talked about a while ago.
Yeah.
And does that tie into this?
No.
Oh, this is a standalone story, although it's not clear if it's in continuity or not.
Right.
Which is part of my misgivings.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about that more on the next episode of View from the Gutters.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everybody. Thank you to our show sponsors and our patrons and everyone that listens to the show.
People everywhere.
And people that don't listen to the show, you can go fuck yourself. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to View from the Gutters. I hope our recommendations have inspired you to go out and find some new comics you'll enjoy. Join us next time for a discussion of our selected title, but like every week, we encourage you to read all of the recommended books. In the meantime, please leave us an iTunes review. It really does help new listeners find the show. You can also like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube, and follow us on Twitter at ViewFRTHGutters. Feel free to email us at contact@viewfromthegutters.com. Please send us any questions, comments, or recommendations you might have. And be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel as we post new videos every week. And thanks again for listening. And as always, keep reading.